welcome to our brief webinar for carers on equality, diversity and inclusion. This is a short webinar for informal carers that is based upon the CQF MVQ course that we run for paid care staff. Because we've altered the format to make it more appropriate to you as an informal carer, there are a number of things that we've left out, but we hope that you'll find the webinar informative and useful. There are some things that we will cover in the webinar which are clearly for staff members. These may be useful for you because many of you, we know, employ paid carers. So, let's have a look at the aims of today's webinar. We hope to give you an introduction to equality, diversity and human rights as those terms and approaches are used in the care sector. We hope that you will gain a better understanding of the meanings and how to approach these important issues. And also, if you employ carers, to understand the behaviours that they should show the people they care for. If we were to do this face to face with a group of people, we would always use the disclaimer on the slide about offending people. We hope that that won't be an issue for you today. What about our learning outcomes for today? We always try to be clear about what these are at the beginning of a webinar, so it'll be clear to you what you should get from the webinar. Today, we will define and understand the importance of equality, diversity, inclusion, human rights, discrimination, perception and stereotyping. We'll explain how the law protects people from discrimination. We'll look at defining prejudice and explain how it can impact on individuals. We'll identify where discrimination can be found in the care field. And hopefully we'll know how to promote diversity and reduce discrimination in the workplace, although we'll be focusing less on the last one as this is not for paid staff, but it's for informal carers. Let's have a look at some of the definitions of these complex terms. Equality, the condition of being equal. Equal, meaning of similar value or quality, being evenly balanced. As an example, sometimes things need to be changed to bring about equality. For instance, information might need to be made available in different formats to make sure that all people have access to it. Diversity, what does that mean? It's all about differences and variety. When talking about people, we're not just meaning physical differences, but skills, temperament, abilities and so on. I think we all know that a good team of people is made up of different people with different skills and abilities. What about human rights? We'll talk more about these later, but they're the legal rights and freedoms that all individuals can expect based on the principles of equality, dignity, courtesy, respect, fairness, autonomy and empowerment. How about inclusion? Inclusion is about embracing all individuals regardless of their race, their gender, their disability, medical or other needs, culture, age, religion or sexuality, allowing equal access and opportunities and getting rid of discrimination and intolerance. So what is discrimination? Discrimination can be defined as unequal or unfair treatment of individuals or groups. An example here might be someone not given the choice of food that they like. But of course it's important to remember that not all differences are obvious. People may have hidden or at least hard to immediately identify differences. Differences such as communication barriers, an example of which might be dyslexia. People might have sensory impairments. People might have medical conditions such as epilepsy. And of course there are people's beliefs and values. They could be religious or cultural differences. There might be differences in beliefs, experience, attitudes which stem from our education or our family background. In society we really should recognise and celebrate diversity. It's actually quite easy to find out about people's differences. Try them yourself, and if you employ paid care staff, make sure they do so as well. What can you do? Well, ask people about themselves. Listen, genuinely listen to the answers they give you. Observe their behaviour and listen and try and respond to any requests or needs that individual has. Sometimes people ask us why we should embrace diversity. This is a slide about the workplace, but I think there's some really useful content for us all in it. So why embrace diversity? I think there are some pretty simple answers to that question. Firstly, we all want to be accepted. Secondly, We need different skills in every team. Thirdly, workplaces and everywhere else is happier if everyone is accepted. And lastly, we work better in a team if we feel that we are respected. One of the things that we do need to tackle is that of perception and stereotyping. It can be really easy to fall into the trap of stereotyping. There are some obvious ones. For instance, how often have you heard, all elderly people are? That could be deaf, it could be forgetful, it could be incontinent. Of course, we know that this is not the case. The key is to question any stereotypes or perceptions that may cross your mind and ask yourself if they're actually true. I think we all know that they're not. I want to say something about harassment, bullying and prejudice. These words can be value-laden, so here we have some basic definitions. Harassment is any unwanted behaviour that causes an individual to feel uncomfortable, upset or distressed. Bullying is characterised as offensive, intimidating, malicious or insulting behaviour, an abuse or misuse of power through means that undermine, humiliate, denigrate or injure the individual. Prejudice. Well, to be prejudiced is to be biased or to hold an opinion before knowing the facts, prejudging or holding any preconceived ideas. It's really important to identify how discrimination can come into care, and this may be of importance to those of you who also use paid carers. Discrimination can take a number of forms. For instance, not being given choices, not being provided with resources, your cultural or your religious needs not being facilitated, or in general a lack of person-centred care. We know that discrimination has an impact on the people who are being discriminated against, but people can react in different ways and at different times to that discrimination. For instance, they might do one of the following things. They might resist, they may not accept what is happening, they might challenge the behaviour. They might just acquiesce. They might go along to get along, appear to accept what's happening to them. They also might withdraw. They might remove themselves from the situation and just not participate. These are things we need to keep a very careful eye on. There are two key pieces of legislation or laws that we need to know about. Firstly, the Human Rights Act of 1998, and secondly, the Equality Act of 2010. Just briefly to talk about the Human Rights Act. The Human Rights Act gives you rights to a number of things. It gives you the right to life. It gives you the right not to be tortured. Also, not to be treated or punished in a degrading or inhuman way. It gives you the right not to have to do forced labour or be a slave. It gives you the right to liberty and security as a person. It also gives you the right to a fair trial. And it also gives the individual other rights and freedoms. For instance, freedom from retrospective penalties or laws. It gives the right for respect for private and family life, your home and your correspondence. It gives you the right for freedom of thought, conscience and religion, freedom of expression, assembly and association, and the right to marry and have a family. This has been a real whistle-stop tour. We do hope that you found it useful and informative. There's a great deal of information out there and available if you're interested in looking further into this area. There's some resources listed on this slide. Thank you for attending our webinar. We look forward to seeing you here next time.